Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Green Zone podcast. Yours truly, Cameron Green. Where we dive into the NFL draft. The outcome of that happened last week. It didn't really have a pre-draft expectation or a mock draft of mine at all. Bear with me here. I've been sick for the last week and a half. It has been not a fun week and a half like that as well. So we're trying to get you the content out to you. It's kind of the first really main thing that's happened in the sports world since maybe our last episode, which is about the Final Four. So, looking at the NFL draft, we'll look at that. We'll dig into some of the more sort of the quarterback room, how that went down, and looking at some other picks in that first round, and see really who came away as winners and losers of the draft this year. So, again, bear with me here. Trying to muscle through here. Got a pretty nasty sinus infection. I got my water here as well. So if I sip on that every once in a while. Please bear with me here. We're going to dive right into this one. I want to talk about the quarterback situation in this year's draft with two first rounders, of course, being Cam Ward taking number one overall and Jackson Dart at 25. So the Titans, I think, here get a really good player that obviously could kind of end the era of Will Levis being a starting quarterback in Tennessee. I think that was nothing really new that we knew going into this draft as well. Now, Cam Ward, if you watched any of the NFL draft, he wasn't really listed as the top player in a lot of people's position rankings. A lot of that went to Travis Hunter, a lot of that went to Abdul Carter, other players in the draft. But Tennessee here wants to restart their franchise from the beginning. And I think getting Cam Ward at one is the best move for them. I think he seemed like the clear best quarterback on the board. I wonder why they never did want to trade out of that number one spot in case someone else wanted to get up and maybe take Travis Hunter number one or take Abdul Carter number one. But at the same point, too, you risk not getting your guy. So I kind of get why they stuck at one. Um, Looking at it next year, I mean, that Tennessee uh, offense situation it's going to be a rough year for Tennessee once again. Like I think it's going to be a season where you're looking to just make improvements year after year. You know, like the quarterback room right now, Brandon Allen, Tim Boyle, Will Levis, and now Cam Ward. Okay. So like Cam Ward, you would think based off that day one starter, the running back room, Julius Chestnut, Tony Pollard, Jabari Small, Tyjae Spears. Spears had some good games last year, but this still feels like it's kind of Pollard's room. But who is Cam Ward going to be throwing to? Well, let's see. You got Van Jefferson out there. Tyler Lockett just got signed. Calvin Ridley, Treylon Burks. So there are some decent receivers on Tennessee. I wouldn't say in their prime right now because Calvin Ridley in his prime, Tyler Lockett in his prime, even Van Jefferson in his prime. Very viable receivers. But, like you say, when you're looking at starting over a franchise like Tennessee is trying to do night to day, it's going to take time. It's going to take some patience. Not everyone's going to have a CJ Stroud situation, a Jaden Daniels situation. And of course, this year too, when there's not that many quarterbacks taken in that first round, especially in this next quarterback we will talk about here at 25, Jackson Dart, there's not a lot of situations where I think a rookie quarterback is going to play up this year and play out. So like the big thing I'm looking at here too as well is the offensive rookie of the year next year. That could very well be a running back, Ashton Genty. That could very well be your receiver. That could be a lot of different players. Like the skill positions are open. If you don't want to pick Cam Ward to be your offensive rookie of the year, I think you got a lot of names you could pick. Looking at 25, Jackson Dart. This pick makes sense, I think, for the Giants because they could have taken a quarterback at three, and it was refreshing to see them go up and at least make a trade, to get a quarterback. But it's a very interesting quarterback room now. Jackson Dart joins Tommy DeVito, Russell Wilson, and Jameis Winston. Like I said, that's a pretty good quarterback room collectively. Like there's not a lot of guys you see in there that have blemishes on their careers. At this point in their careers, Russell and Jameis, they know what they probably are. But Russ still had some good games last year in Pittsburgh. Jameis can still throw the ball around a little bit. Is he still going to be a Pro Bowl quarterback that he once was? Throw for 4,000 yards? Probably not. But at the same time, when you're trying to transition to being a rebuilding team, I think Jameis Winston's one of the perfect guys to have in that building. And Jackson Dart too, of course. We think we all know what this is going to be for him. It's going to be one of those learning years that you just sit back there and watch Russell do Russ things, and you watch Jameis do Jameis things, and watch Tommy Cutlets do Tommy Cutlet things. Like that's one of those things too. Is like it's okay to just sit there and kind of watch and see what happens. Now, does DeVito get cut? I don't know if the Giants are going to carry four quarterbacks. Like that's something to be said. But Russell's older, Jameis is older. Maybe you want to keep four quarterbacks in that room just in case there's any injury situations. But I think there's no one better than Jackson Dart right now to really study how people prep than say Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. Like they're going to show him how to be a quarterback in the league. We'll see in how long it'll take for Jackson Dart to be a quarterback in the NFL. Do I think it's going to be this year? If I had to guess, probably I'd say unlikely. Probably more of a next year. It's a future pick. It's a patience pick. And that's what you're looking at there with the Giants at 25. One quarterback taken in the second round, Tyler Show from Louisville. It's not a great pick, I don't think. I mean, I don't love Tyler Show that much, and New Orleans has so many quarterback problems. Like, I think they're almost too scared to go into one right now. And we look at next year's quarterback draft is supposed to be way, way, way more deep than this year's was. So maybe New Orleans is just kind of saying, we're going to roll with what we got. We're paying Derek Carr a significant amount of money to maybe not play this year. Spencer Rattler still has a ton of potential. So, like last year, he got kind of thrown to the fire way before he was ready. Maybe this year, if they can tap into him and actually give him chances to be ready and be prepped for him to be a starter quarterback, it would not surprise me as I'll pull up the Saints quarterback room on day one. But it would not surprise me, though, if Spencer Rattler isn't the day one starter for the Saints this year. Derek Carr, we don't know what that's going to look like. Ben DiNucci, Jake Hayner, Spencer Rattler, and Tyler Show. Like I think if it was me, I would pick Spencer Rattler to be the opening day starter for the Saints this upcoming season, day one. But again, too, the New Orleans Saints are in a spot where is it time to blow it up? It's probably closer than we all want to say it is. And for Saints fans out there, it's sooner rather than later that this thing is going to have to get blown up and start all over. It was shown last year that there were some blemishes on the team. It's a reason why Dennis Allen got fired. It's a reason why the Saints are still struggling to kind of find their identity. And they'll look to pivot some way. And it's not bad for them that came out with a quarterback in this situation. I'll talk about Shador in a second. I'll get to that. So don't, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. Looking in the third round, it was two of the great college quarterbacks of the past 2 or 3 years, Jalen Milroe and Dylan Gabriel out of Alabama and Oregon, respectfully. Milroe going to the Seahawks and Gabriel going to the Browns. The Browns, that's their first quarterback they took off the board in this year's draft. I mean, Jalen Milroe has a lot of good upside for him this year. And to be in a spot where, like, you're looking at, yeah, they have Sam Darnold like that, but you traded away Sam Howell. That is something like that's a player you would like to be able to replace. Darnold, Jaron Hall, Drew Lock, Jalen Milroe. So, of course, it'll be mostly Darnold and Lock being the 1 and 2. Like, I think that's something that is going to be very clear from day one. Milroe, I think you would carry him as a third quarterback. Jaron Hall, maybe a practice squad guy or a preseason guy that fights for a spot. But I think Jaron Hall is kind of like the fourth musketeer. Kind of on the outside looking in right now. I don't really know he has a spot there in Seattle. But of course, Darnold, they made a significant financial commitment to him last year. You expect him to do very similar things that he did in Minnesota this past year, especially having Jackson Smith-Njigba and Cooper Kupp. Like that's a really good receiving core to build around if you're Seattle right now. I don't think there's any reason to put any sort of rebuild spot on Seattle right now. They're in a great spot right now to compete. And especially in the NFC West, like we thought the 49ers, and I thought the 49ers were going to be great last year. I had them as my Super Bowl champion last year. They missed the playoffs last year. I thought Arizona was going to be a really good team, and they were kind of middle of the pack. The Rams turned out to be the best one of all of them there, and that's the reason why they kind of soared to the top. But the Seahawks could compete next year in the NFC West. I think it's an exciting division. Grabbing Jalen Milroe, it's not a bad insurance plan in case something goes wrong, but also looking for 2, 3, 4 years ahead. He might be the guy in Seattle. Now, Dylan Gabriel, the Browns, picked 94th overall. The Browns picked the next two quarterbacks here. Of course, first we'll talk about is Dylan Gabriel, and then we'll dive into Shador. Dylan Gabriel, it's an interesting pick because that quarterback room is wild right now. I think it's Flacco's job day one. I don't really think that Deshaun's going to play this year. And if he doesn't play this year, I think Deshaun's not going to play in Cleveland ever again. Terrible contract, just jaw it up. Guy was never healthy when you got him. You traded for him in the midst of a investigation. We'll leave it at that. Gets suspended, comes back, hasn't played football in so long, and then decides, like, he really hadn't played football in almost 2 years. And you gave him $250 million guaranteed. And he comes back and he's not a good quarterback. He's not a good player. He's not playing well. You have backlash from the public and outside other everywhere else, every other fan base, every other media market in the whole country is ripping Deshaun Watson because new accusers start coming out and they keep talking about, well, if he keeps getting more accusers, then he might get suspended again by pro football, and that it's just disastrous off the bat. When you sign a guy to that kind of contract, you risk the fact that if it doesn't work out right now, that it's going to be considered one of the worst. And if you're a guy in a fan base that maybe can't handle that, not saying Deshaun Watson can't, but he was kind of battling himself to get back to playing like Deshaun Watson was, and he's never played like it since. So it's hard for me to justify why that contract was worth giving out. Now, especially the fact that you kicked out Baker Mayfield, okay, that's the first thing you have to look at. And now you're searching to kind of undo the mistake you kind of made. And you had Joe Flacco, then you let him go, and he went to Indianapolis, did his thing for a year, and now he's back. I think it'd be refreshing for Cleveland to just simply go, our bad, let's move on. I think this is the year they're going to do it, but it's with Flacco and Kenny Pickett, which Kenny Pickett, first round pick, but he hasn't proved much in the NFL. But Super Bowl champion, took the knees last year, victory formation last year for the Eagles. That's got to mean something. And then you add to that mix Dylan Gabriel, and you're going to mix into this their next quarterback they took in Shedeur Sanders. Uh, it's going to be really interesting. I wish Hard Knocks was picked Cleveland this year. I saw the thing that said if you did Hard Knocks in the previous 8 years, you don't have to uh, give into the NFL or to HBO for that. The Browns did it in 2018, I want to say, for Baker's rookie year. So they don't really have to do it if they don't want to, but that'd be quite a Hard Knocks to watch. But Dylan Gabriel is not a bad pick in the third round if that was the one quarterback you were going to pick in this draft. But of course, we know that's not where they went. I'm going to speak my mind here on Shedeur Sanders, okay? Because as a fifth round pick, it's great value. It's a fantastic value pick in the fifth round. But Shedeur Sanders should have been nowhere near the fifth round. We look at so many dudes in football that get picked in the first round, the second round, the third round, and the fourth round that have serious penalties, meaning they have flaws in their personality, flaws in off the field issues, uh, flaws in other aspects other than playing football. They have flaws in their game. They're not polished. They're not ready. They're not this. They're not that. We have other reasons where people are just stretching for guys. Like we see special teamers get taken really early. We see quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, all across the board that get taken based off potential and not who they are. I don't think for what Shedeur Sanders is, that he should have been a fifth round draft pick, 144th overall. I'm not saying he should have been a first round pick. I thought he might have been. Pittsburgh seemed like a good spot for him at 21. New Orleans felt like a good spot for him at 9 until you realize they're not that interested. But then go get him at 40. Go get him in the third round. Go get him, there was rounds for these teams to go up and get Shedeur Sanders. He's not a fifth round pick. He might not be a first round pick, but he is not a fifth round pick. In my head, the only thing I'm comparing this to is Dak Prescott, where Dak Prescott, not a bad quarterback at Mississippi State. Now Shedeur was in the cups of being in a Heisman situation and playing with a Heisman Trophy winner. That sure helps. But Dak Prescott, Fourth round pick out of Mississippi State, Shador Sanders. Fifth round pick out of Colorado. Should Shador have been a second round pick? I think Shador Sanders should have been a second or third round pick after he fell out of the first round because, look, if teams aren't looking for starting quarterbacks, there's only 32. There's 32 starting quarterbacks. Only a handful get drafted this as in the calendar year, let's say, in the current draft that teams are drafting for that seriously need a quarterback. Tennessee seriously needs a quarterback. They need that life-changing quarterback. How many other quarterbacks or teams, I should say, desperately need a quarterback right now? I would say New Orleans needs one right now. I would say if I'm looking at this right now, we don't know where Aaron Rodgers will sign. Pittsburgh could use a quarterback right now. Um, but there's not that many teams that we're looking at here that say, I need a quarterback right now. I'm drowning. Throw me a life raft, and that life raft's name is Shador Sanders. So I get why teams are like, if we're drafting a backup quarterback, maybe I won't spend my first round pick on a guy who is going to sit and then might not be the quarterback that we're looking for. If he is this year's Paxton Lynch, I'm not going to draft him in the first round. If I can get him later, I'm not going to get him here. Now, teams said he didn't draft or he didn't interview well. That's perception. Again, like we're not in those meetings. It's all based off, what teams want to say. If they don't like the guy, that's fine. But I find it crazy that he falls to the fifth round, the team that just took a quarterback a round and a half prior. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Like getting him in the fifth round, I think is great value, but I don't know if going to Cleveland is great value. Now, the thing that he will have working for him is he will have a chance to compete to potentially be the number three quarterback probably in Cleveland, best case scenario. I think it's Flacco's job. I think Pickett's a clear backup. And then you got Gabriel and Sanders. Like, is it one of those situations where if Shadura plays a hell of a preseason, teams go, we were wrong about him, and now we want to trade for him? And this is Cleveland's way of rubbing their hands together and say, we did it again. We traded down and got more picks and gave up. We didn't draft Travis Hunter and got some more picks. And now we'll draft Shador and we'll watch him in preseason. We know he's good and he'll play really well. And some teams will be like, that is this year's Joe Milton. I want that guy on my team. Because the price of a backup quarterback and a good backup quarterback can be quite expensive in the NFL. $4, $5, $6 million. To get Shador, fifth round draft pick salary, might be a little more appealing to some of these teams. So I think there's strategy in what the Browns did by taking him in the fifth round. I don't know if he's going to compete for the quarterback job. Definitely probably won't this year because I think Flacco and Pickett have that. Or if Watson's ready, it's Watson's. You're paying him that much money, it's going to be Watson's. But it feels like it's Flacco and Pickett's. So you're fighting for that third spot. Cleveland Browns might be putting themselves in a spot too where we just want to get people in the building for preseason games. And then we're going to pick and choose. I don't know if Cleveland can afford four quarterbacks when they have needs on their roster because they're a good team, man. Cleveland is a good team. I thought Cleveland was going to improve this year. They just didn't at all. So Cleveland could be a good team when you have Myles Garrett. You have certain pieces there. You go, like, we could be a really good team if we put the right pieces together. They're looking to acquire more pieces for Shador Sanders. That to me is what looks like what the gist of taking him in the fifth round does to a team that kind of needs a quarterback, doesn't really need one if you just drafted one round before. That's my little rant on Shador Sanders. It's great value in the fifth round, but I don't really understand why he was a fifth round pick. Does he should have been a fifth round pick? In my head, no. Should have gotten way earlier, maybe not a first round pick. But I really don't see why he should have been a fifth round draft pick. The sixth round with Kyle McCord, Will Howard, Riley Leonard, and Graham Mertz and Cam Miller. Again, all these guys are battling for spots. You're all just playing numbers game. And the seventh round, Curtis Rourke and Quinn Ewers. Look at Quinn Ewers, man. Quinn Ewers Could have stayed in school for another year, gotten a good NIL deal pay, but decided he wanted to go to the NFL, and instead he will sit there and look for a $700,000 contract from the Miami Dolphins. So it's going to be interesting to see what he ends up doing. I want to look at the middle picks though of this draft, more so focusing on Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter for their teams. Uh, Jacksonville might be the team this year that I'm looking at on paper, and this is my team that I think could be potentially winning the AFC South. I know I say that with Houston in that division, but man, Jacksonville was 4-13 last year, and I think they added Travis Hunter, the best player in the draft this year. We have to expect Trevor Lawrence to play like Trevor Lawrence at some point. Last year, Trevor Lawrence threw 24 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. It was a pretty good year for Trevor Lawrence. Or excuse me, I'm so sorry. Looking at the wrong numbers there. 11 touchdowns to 7 interceptions in 10 games played. He definitely took a bounce back last year. That was definitely not the Trevor Lawrence you wanted to see. Looking at the other position players and skill players in the team, Travis Etienne, Tank Bigsby have had some really nice games last year. In the receiving pool right now, Brian Thomas Jr. had a really great year as a receiver. Really could have been in that mix. I mean, he could have been Rookie of the Year if you really wanted to give a guy Rookie of the Year. Brian Thomas Jr. had 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns. It's a great rookie year. It's just not good enough. But if Travis Hunter will indeed play both ways, that Jacksonville might have won this draft just by that pick alone. I think seriously, getting the best player in the draft really does help you in your overall ranking, and it's definitely a culture setter because now you got Trevor Lawrence, Travis Hunter, two of the greatest college players have done it in the last 5 to 10 years. Pair those guys together, it's great marketing, and Travis Hunter is just one of those guys, and then you can build around a franchise for. Um, and definitely you can try and put those together. Abdul Carter, the Giants at 3, I really enjoy that pick too because I think, like again, the fact that they got themselves a quarterback in the late first round, making sure they addressed that need was a very good move by the Giants. Abdul Carter, everyone says looks like a little Micah Parsons in him. I definitely see that comparison, of course, but the Giants did a really nice job drafting this year. Ashton Genty, the Raiders at 6. It's a great pick, I think, as well, because they really had no running back in Vegas at all last year. Ashton Genty should lead that backfield clearly for Geno Smith being the quarterback there and for Pete Carroll. But there's a lot of picks this year that I really think that teams drafted for need more than they did for the good players. Like, meaning as I say this, like this year's draft to me didn't feel as game changing as previous years. My draft I did a year ago video. You look at that draft. I think we'll look at that draft years and years from now, and we'll see guys that were taken, and they'll have major impacts on the team that they're playing for. We're looking right now. We'll go back and look at this draft from last year. Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Marvin Harrison Jr. Joe Alt seems to be a tackle, a staple there for the Chargers for a long time. Malik Neighbors was a Pro Bowler last year, depending on what happens quarterback-wise, but J.J. McCarthy and Bo Nix. Brock Bowers had himself one of the best tight end years by a rookie we've ever seen. You're looking at Jared Verse for the Rams, a Pro Bowler last year. Brian Thomas Jr., like I mentioned earlier, had a great rookie year. Xavier Worthy played really well last year, especially in the playoffs and the Super Bowl. Like maybe we don't mention the fact that Chiefs were getting blown out in that Super Bowl, but he had himself quite a game. 300 yards receiving in the postseason last year with 3 touchdowns. A good year for Xavier Worthy. Xavier Legette in Carolina, Ricky Pearsall in the 49ers. Like there were some really good players taken last year that I think we're going to see very similarly. Like that's going to be a draft for a long time, that those players will be making big impacts on those teams. I don't really know if it's not a bad thing to say because drafts are good, drafts are bad. There's far and few in between that are really like really, really good drafts. I think this year might have just been an average draft. Not a lot of quarterbacks taken. It's fine. A lot of teams taking off what they can build on right now, like Will Campbell, the Patriots, a good pick. You need to protect Drake May. You need to get a running back, Ashton Genty. You need to get certain things. The easiest pick is right here. I think this year's draft was a pretty solid draft for teams that needed to get what they needed to get done. Is it a game-changing draft? No, but they're not every year. That's going to happen. But we're looking at next year's draft, and we'll see what happens there. But the NFL season is just around the corner. Training camp in July. It should be a really fun year this year. I love doing these NFL draft videos in a year in review. Feels just like yesterday we were doing the one from last year. But that's gonna be all here from Cameron Green, the Green Zone podcast. Thanks for sticking through me here while I was kind of sniffling through the camera. Again, sorry if I sound stuffed up. I'm really trying my best to get you guys this content. So from Cameron Green, the Green Zone podcast, signing off. We'll see you guys next time on our YouTube page.